So the next few slides is just going to present a few diagrams. These diagrams are here to give a visual representation or a guideline through our different types of flows. So the first one being the signed contract, is very simply put, this is where a flow starter uploads their signed contracts and goes through a brief approval process. And once that is done, when they send it through the approval process, each party of approval can review it. They can choose to have it sent back to the flow starter. Maybe they want to have certain revision notes, any reasons that they should make any adjustments to this signed contract. The flow starter can take the feedback and they can choose to resubmit it through the flow, as you see here, or they can choose to overall cancel the flow, which is this design here. Yes. So let's say the signed contract goes through very swiftly through the approval process. That is when they can choose to process the documents electronically into their document management module of AnyWare. Or you can also approve it and send it to your ERP system, such as Sage. So there's two ways to go through it. Regardless, both of them are going to be saved in that document management module. It's just the option to see if you want to have it communicate with your ERP system, or you can also easily just directly save it, store it within the system directories. The next diagram is the template contract document flow. This one is just a little more complicated, but not that much. So what I mean by that is I have a template, and I am constantly reviewing it. I'm constantly preparing the contract according to the template. The template is almost like a guideline. Think of it essentially a way for me to fill in. It's a way for me to fill in certain terms or certain parties within the contract based on the template that is stored in the system. So once I'm done preparing it, it goes through an approval process. Now this approval process is very much similar to the signed contract flow process. You may have noticed that there is an added party of the finance department. That is because these contracts need more supervision in regards to particular parts, such as head of purchasing has their own specialties, and the legal department has their own considerations for the contract, and lastly the finance department has their own things to take care of when they look at the contract. And when the approval process is done, it goes back to the flow starter. Now this flow starter then has the options to send it to be internally signed, so you can have it signed internally from all of the people involved in the process. You can also get the signature of the customer, or you can also get you can send it to the vendor to sign. Without much said, the flow starter at this point could also save it, whether it be through the document management in AnyWare, or they want to send it to the ERP system and also have it saved in there. Again, we have the nice flexibility. Now let's move on to the third diagram. We have the new contract document flow. Now this is saying where I come up with a draft. This is my own personal draft that I just want to get it approved before I can prepare an official, like a PDF formatted contract to get assigned to the vendor. It's also very easy, as displayed through this diagram here. It is also very similar to the templated contract. Instead of having the template to guide my preparation of the contract, I already have the draft of the contract on hand. So it is very similar in that case. Everything after the point of contract preparation, going through the flow of approvals, is very similar. In fact, this diagram right now that we are seeing, the new contract document flow, this is going to be what I will be showing in this webinar. This is going to be our little demonstration. So yes, without further ado, I would like to mention, if there are any questions thus far about the contract manager and its features, benefits, maybe any other information regarding the contract manager, you can definitely leave it in the chat box below, or save your questions. We'll have a question and answer session right at the end of this webinar. Great. So allow me to switch over to Workflow Anywhere. So here I am. I am logged in as an example user in Workflow Anywhere. This user is named Sheila Jam. And let's pull down the applications. Within the applications, we will find our vendor contract management. And just to give a little guidelines on how it goes, let's do a little tour right now. We have our parameters. These are the parameters that we had mentioned earlier. So you have your contract types, and you can always choose to add or delete as you may need according to your particular processes. You have your approvers. Now these are the members that come into play. As you can see, they already have the roles assigned to these particular users of Workflow Anywhere. So we see Kevin Becker is the head of the finance department. Philippe Cortez is the head of the legal department. Corey Osterk is the head of purchasing. These are the characters, or these are the users that come into play once we start our flow of contract management. So do keep that in mind. They'll be coming a lot later. Again, as I said earlier in the presentation, you can have as many users as you need when you're going through your flows of contract management. These are all very adjustable. These, again, it's under the parameters tab, meaning that these are where you define your flows, or you define what types of contracts there are. Now, the vendors and purchase orders, for the sake of this demonstration, they will be coming in from Sage. We'll more on that later. And then last, there's the customization map. These are just the ways to toggle any certain specifications you may need, such as if you want to have things integrated with Acumatica, if you want to have integration with your purchasing orders or your vendors, and also you can have other types of customizations. These are up to you. Next, outside of the parameters menu, we also have the archives menu. Now, this is one of the ways to view all of your contracts. So right now, I am in the general contract archive, and as you can see, I can go through. There are many fields regarding our contracts. I can even choose to say, if I wanted to have, I can search across all fields. So if I wanted to see only non-disclosure agreements, if I can just drag here. And there we are. We have our contract type, non-disclosure agreements. And also, if you want to say, like, if you want to have these fields prioritized, you can easily configure them and just view them how you would need to view them in terms of finding your archived contracts. So I'm going to exit this search real quick, and I'll show you the next tab over, which is the signed document contract archive. Now these are the completed contracts. They've gotten through their whole flow all the way up until their status is finished. And see, we have that here. And same thing goes for when you search through all of them. You can have your fields just the way you'd like. I can also show, maybe if we were to do by dates, if you want to just say, contracts that have in March. Yes, you'll have it by request date right here. The next tab is the template caption map. Now this is the map. This is the key to the templating that I had mentioned earlier. So if I wanted to have go through the template flow of a contract manager, this is where we see, depending on how your template is laid out, it will have bracketed variables or bracketed little codes. This is the answer key to tell you that, oh, if the code on my template is pound reg underscore dat, that is a keyword, that is a code name for request date. So this is my little backbones, a guideline through when I prepare my template. Think of it as an answer key for the template. Excellent. So now that I have shown we've done a quick guide, a quick tour, now let's actually create our contract. Again, in this demonstration, I will be using a new document form type, and the company at hand is the Care Consulting. Of course, now we go into our vendor ID. So as I mentioned earlier, these are coming in from Sage. So I will click on the drop down. And now we will have all of these vendors and their information. These are slurped from our ERP system. So these are coming in from Sage. So now let me click on this one, 1450. That's going to be what we're working with today. Now you see all of this information is automatically filled out just from that selection. Now the next up, we can have our related purchase orders. This is also going to be coming in from Sage. So let me select that. So here we have we have 3 different types of purchase orders regarding this vendor. I'm going to pick the first one. Now the next step, you have more general information about your contract. Let's say that it was set up. You can tweak these dates just as you need, according to the specifications of the contract, of course. So let's say it was set up last week and it was active 2 days ago, and I want to have the expiration dates a little further ahead. Let's do 3 months, let's say. Now, this field is very important. You can actually set a reminder. So how many days prior to the expiration date are the parties involved in the contract going to be reminded if they haven't tended to the contract yet? So you can set that to be in the units of days. So I'm going to say 15 days. Now I'm selecting the financial settings. So we have our contract type. We saw earlier how many contract types we can have. You can add as much as you want. You can delete as much as you need. These are just for your particular use. So we're just going to say non-disclosure agreements. This is where you dictate the amount. This is in regarding to finances. This is going to, and lastly, you can just have a nice explanation or description about the contract that we're working with. Now, we are working with next up is the penalty conditions or warranty conditions. These are the clauses that we had mentioned earlier. So let's say I do want, in fact, a penalty clause, and I want it. I can choose that this penalty clause be enforced. It's just a little added explanation. Sometimes that is something that you may need as a little note or a little description as to why this penalty clause is in place. The same idea would go for a warranty clause. Very similar, very straightforward. There's also a tax clause, which I'll show now. Let's say 18%. Everything will be generally automatically generated. Put in a quick explanation here. Now, under the filled and edited by, this is your own comments based on your part of the entire flow, and this is something that you can leave a note for the other parties to view. I will simply say, I am Sheila Dong. I am Sheila Dong. Wonderful. Now, before I send this contract to be prepared through the approval process, of course, I need to submit a draft, and this is the draft that is going to be reviewed by the parties. So I will put in an example draft Actually, let's say draft. We'll get a notification that a new file has been created, and right here is in our attachments, and this is there's going to be a file path associated to it so that we can also find it within our documents document management module, or it'll also be nested within this contract. So there are many different ways to find our documents quickly and accurately. There's also the opportunity to add any supported documents. These supported documents, they could be document type files. They can also be image type files. So right here I have an image that I can attach here. Excellent. So there it is in our supported attachments. Now everything looks good in regards to the first step of preparing a draft contract to be gone through the approval process before I submit a official contract to be signed. So let's start the flow. We click on send and prepare contract. Operation is successful, and we'll display the flow history. And now the flow history tells us, we have our timestamps based on the actions of this flow. And we also have what part of the process is happening now. So now we have we have started the flow, we have sent it. Next up, we are sending it to the head of purchase, waiting for their approval, and that comes to our next person in the flow, Corey Osterp. So that Corey is playing the role of the head of purchase. So I will quickly switch into the user of Corey. Yes, so now we are at the login screen. Right when we are logged in as Corey, we can see in their dashboard under approvals, there are 4 pending tasks. One of them is actually the categorized under a vendor contract management process. And sure enough, this is in fact the contract that we had prepared earlier through Sheila's environment, or Sheila's login. So now everything that we had prepared earlier has become read-only. This is a way that we can't touch. We are only allowed to do what we are only allowed to manage or oversee the details of this contract that we need to be in charge of as the head of purchase, right? So this is when somebody can choose to open the documents. This is the example draft contract documents. There is a native view of documents. There's a document viewer within Workflow Anywhere, so that you can you don't have to always download or export and open it up with your own viewer. You have it straight natively within the system. And the advantage of having this as a document within the viewer is that you can add your notes. If you want to add any annotations, make any edits, you are all free to do so within this viewer. It's very easy to use, very customizable, and so we'll go back. Any notes or annotations that you add to that document, other parties, future parties who are reviewing this draft will be able to access those. I will add a explanation here. So this is not necessary. This is not in any means mandatory. Writing in an explanation, but it's just I would like to show that this is a way that you can have a little maybe like a way of discussion, right? It's like a forum post or a board of discussion or comments that you can see when you go through the process. So for example, when I was Sheila, I had added in my explanation of I am Sheila Zhang, and I can read that here. So that way you can say have a nice little discussion-based flow going on. the reason for having this type of explanation is just to improve your efficiency. Going through a contract, it requires a lot of cooperation, and that is an opportunity. One of the ways that you can increase your cooperation or communication. Great. So I had clicked approved. The flow history is telling me that yes, I have approved it, and now it's sent to the head of the legal department, so Philippe Cortez, which we had also seen in the approvers in our contract manager. So, and also we can show when I go back to the home page, before there were 4 pending tasks in the home screen, now there are 3. That is because we have taken care of our role, or what we needed to take care of with that contract. So excuse me, I will now switch into Philippe's. Just going to take some brief time. And so the idea here is that when I was Corey or when I was Sheila, I wasn't able to access the same view or the same version of the contract that Philippe is going to be able to view. Again, that is the idea of having a permission-based contract. So people are only in charge, or people can only make additions to parts that they are in charge of. So it's the same idea here. As Philippe, I'm supposed to review the parts of the contract that are meaningful to me. If I can go back into the viewer, I can see any notes or annotations that may have been left behind by Corey or Sheila. And when I do so, maybe as Philippe, I like everything. Let's continue the flow here, just to keep it communicative. Excellent. Excellent. So now the flow history now tells us that the contract has been sent to Kevin Becker. Now, just a little confirmation I'm going to show from the home screen. What had been 1 previously is now 0. We have taken care of that pending task that was showing up on our dashboard, displaying a number, displaying a notification. So lastly, I'll switch into the head of the finance department, Kevin Becker. Did I misspell that? Great. So now I'm logged in as Kevin Becker. I am, the head of the finance department. I'm logged in. I'm looking at my dashboard, and I see, there's 1 approval. It's a vendor contract management process. Let me take care of that, right? So that is what's going to be going on through Kevin's mind. They look through all of the pending tasks under this contract manager. And as the head of the finance department, I'm going to take specific care or pay specific attention to the contract amount, the financial aspect of this contract. If he has any notes regarding this contract, he can say it as well. It's the same idea. They can go through the contract documents, go into that document viewer and see if there's any notes, any annotations, any other things, and they can also contribute as well. They can also write their own notes. They can also write their own annotations. So yes, Kevin Becker approves. The operation is successful. Now we have gone through all of our parties. I'm just going to quickly show back my little PowerPoint presentation. We had seen, we had gone thus far as a flow starter, Sheila Zhang. We had, we had uploaded our draft documents. We had sent it to the head of purchase, which was Corey. Corey had no problem with the contract at all, approved it, sent it to Philippe Cortez of the legal department. Philippe also had no issues with the contract. That he thought everything was fine. He's going to approve it. In fact, he did approve it, and the contract went to Kevin Becker. So that was our finance department. That is where we left off. Kevin Becker approved the documents as well. He felt that everything regarding the finances of our contract in hand in this demonstration is good. Now it goes back to the flow starter. The flow starter is Sheila Zhang. So let me go back. And that is reflected in our system as well. Rather, I should say, what's in the system reflects our diagram, right? So here we have Sheila Zhang is now she was the flow starter, and now the contract is back to her. So I'll take a moment to quickly log back into Sheila Zhang's profile. Wonderful. So now, as Sheila Zhang, she sees, again, there's an approval, there is a pending task in the dashboard, and it's under the vendor contract management. Okay, so, as Sheila, she was the flow starter, she sent this draft, she's getting it back now, she's saying, well, maybe, that contract that I sent in earlier has been approved. Let me see what the next step is. So, as the final party who is looking at this whole write-up, this whole profile of our contract, we can see, any explanations or any comments that were left behind in the parties, all here, as well as their timestamps is also noted here. Everything is intact. Same idea, they can go through. Maybe Sheila will look at all of the notes and annotations, any edits, anything that they can improve on regarding that draft. And when she's done, she's going to add a official signed contract. So that is what I'm doing now. New file created. Excellent. So there it is. Now, again, I am at this part of the step. I am at this step of the process. You can see up here, I have a lot of different actions that I can use with this. So let me pull up my PowerPoint presentation again. This diagram right here is what we're dealing with. We have a lot of actions here. If we want to send our signed contract to particular parties to have them signed, again, this is how contract management will work. They'll get notified through that. Say, for instance, I wanted to send it to a vendor to sign. That it will change the status of my contract, and that status change, or that action of me sending the contract to the vendor, that is going to be stored in our flow history, so that we can always refer to it later. What actions, what particular transactions were made regarding this contract in our little history. As well as being able to send it to a vendor, we can also send it to our internals to sign. If that's ever required, that is something that we can do. And there's just the ways of managing your contracts depending on what types of contracts are being managed, right? What types of actions that need to be taken, you have the options here. And this is just a little way to designate particular actions in your flow. Great. Otherwise, I can also choose to approve and add the signed agreement right into my document management. Let me pull up the diagram again. I have these options right here. So I can approve and send it to my AnyWare document management module. Or I can also send it back to the ERP and have that stored both in my ERP and also in my document management module. In this case, I will approve and add it straight into my document management module because that is an option, and that is something that we can do. Also, it's good to note that the document management module within Workflow Anywhere is well versed in being able to store all of your documents, all of your contracts in a nice little corporate system, very structured, so you can have that stored there. So if you can see on the bottom here, we have a nice little tone. This is to tell us that we have been completed. That is the notification tone. That is actually something that is sent out through every user. If they were to be logged in at that current moment, they would also get that nice little notification. So yes, parts of the contract managing process is in real time. You can get that notification of a complete approved signed contract right when you log in. So we see that we have an approved contract. Where can we view this contract? Well, we can go into where we were before in our little archives under the contract management. We can see it through our list of all of our contracts. Such as here, yes, we have everything regarding the contract that we had earlier. In fact, the most recent one is the one that we are working with, this 2019-0011. That is we can click into it actually and open up and have a nice little view of the profile. And we see it looks exactly like the one that we were dealing with before, which confirms that yes, it is stored in our archives, in our vendor contract archives. Now, if I wanted to view, our finished contract in association with other finished, approved, signed contracts, I can just go into the signed document contract archive. And these are the completed flows. So yes, here it is, 2019-0011. And I can also click in it through there. So yes, once I have finished the process of going through Contract Manager, it is in fact stored in the contract archive. Now, it should also be located in our document management. So if I were to go to Contract and Vendor, 1450, very familiar numbers, non-disclosure agreement, 2019. There it is, 2019-0011, and that is the contract that we are dealing with. In fact, let's view really quick the signed edition. This is the PDF format of our signed contract. Yes, that is correct. So the Workflow Anywhere engine can view both documented drafts, and we also have signed PDFs of contracts as well. So yes, and if anybody was wondering about our little attachment, let me show that real quick. So we have, go back into our signed document archive, and we go to the profile. Maybe we want, I misclicked, apologies. We want to go to the, right. I need to go to the contract archive to view the actual profile of the contract. The signed contract archive is a way for me to directly access the signed contract. That is to be said. I want to look at the actual profile in the form. Yes. And that is the attachment for our contract, Workflow Anywhere. And that is that is going to conclude my demonstration of the new contract management form. Yes, there has been a lot of time taken just for me to switch the users, but you do understand that these users will be logged in at the same time, and they'll be getting their notifications faster and being able to work through the approval process. So yes, it is a time saver, this contract manager, and it is also very efficient because everybody is receiving information about the contract in real time.
Okay, Anderson, it did a great job. We're going to unmute everybody and see if they have any questions. At least I'm trying to unmute them. Okay, do we have any questions?